so I'm pretty late to the party, and the party might already be over. Overture. But you know, better overdue than not at all. My initial ranking of the Lies of P base games bosses is one of the more controversial videos on my channel, and most of the things I still stand by, factual inaccuracies aside. In that video I ranked each boss in tiers that go from awful up to amazing, yet the top tier was never reached. While you might see Overture reach higher highs, it begins with as low lows as in the main story. Tyrannical Predator is among the worst in the whole game, and is a reoccurrence of many of my gripes, namely the animations being deceptive, hard to read, and wonky to look at, and having nothing creative or interesting mechanically. It's especially disappointing when the mini-boss prior to this did actually have some cool shit going for it. The elephant that's like a monster straight from the best movie of all time, The Thing 1982. It looks awesome, and it has something the main game was lacking, attacks that force you to dodge, not just parry everything. Positioning actually matters in this fight, and despite the sluggish movement in Lies of P, it works pretty well. But Tyrannical Predator, instead of having area denial, has vision denial, cause this Killer Croc's head is so fucking big it takes up most of the screen when fought up close. It's eerily similar to the Golden Hippo from Shadow of the Erdtree, with the lock-on point being way too far into the body, making it more of a battle against the camera than the beast. The arena is pretty small too, so if you try to counteract that by being on the move, that won't last you long. I also just don't really like its moveset where every attack is either a bad-looking head slam or a bad-looking bite attack. It's as simple as they come, and as far as I'm concerned, this one can go. Moving up a tier from bad to mediocre, we have the Anguished Guardian of the Ruins, who I think is a huge mixed bag of good, bad, and mostly boring. It being a big goopy monster with too many limbs might be enough to make it a memorable enough spectacle for some, but personally I don't think the visuals are particularly striking, and sometimes its size gets in the way of gameplay when some limbs attack you off-screen. It does have area denials, and that's nice of him, and I like the red attacks where he rises on his hind legs or whatever the fuck, and slams back down. It's satisfying and readable, gives a good punish on the boss as a reward, something you can't say for most red attacks in this game that tend to be poorly telegraphed and just push you away so you can't hit them back. But it is appreciated here where it gives you more time to target his head or hand. Breakable parts of the body is kind of a staple for giant fights, but it is welcome as it gives you more to think about than just dodging. Other than that, the moveset doesn't do much for me, and sometimes it's hard to tell which of the many limbs I'm supposed to be looking out for, if I even can. This attack that has a deceptive animation of the boss kinda rearing up its head, with zero movement in his spear-holding arm, has the tip of the spear visible on frame for 4 whole frames before impact. That is impossible to react to. That's the kind of stuff you just have to memorize. And sure, many fights have stuff you gotta memorize, that is part of the challenge a lot of the time. But I'm kinda picky with what I'm okay being memorization based like that. For example, as bad as the Notria's boss roster was, I really liked how much better the fight against Spaventa became once you memorized when he can do his instant stomp attack. There are moves that I think are worth the pain of that initial unreactability. However, attacks with super subtle animations and forgettable outcomes to them are not what I look for. They're just annoying to have to keep in mind in a slog of a fight where my mind tends to trail off. And I'd rather it trailed off somewhere else. It's more fun out there. And I feel there's no rhythm or flow to the fight, maybe partially because of Lies of P's slow movement making it awkward to run after or away from the boss, and it just drags on longer than it's welcome to stay. Number 6, Green Monster of the Premetamorphic Green Hunter of the Swamp trashed me and turned his cave into a, well, there's no easy way to say this, a puppet graveyard. I was semi-familiar with the original moveset of the Green Monster, so I wasn't quite prepared for him to be flinging his black schlong around like this is Blacked.com. But after the initial shock of the increased aggression and pool of moves, you can see it's not a wholly revolutionized version. It doesn't bring forth any new ideas or gimmicks, it's just more of the same kind of shtick the OG had. Big schlongs, decay, and generic claw attacks. There's just more of them! Small thing I liked was that dodging felt like a more appropriate response at times to avoid multi-hit dong webs or the poison, which never really felt necessary before. It's fun enough as a hidden mini-boss, so I think high mediocre or low decent tier is a fair judgment. Number 5, Veronique, leader of the Sweepers, sweeps all the base game's NPC fights to the point it didn't even register at first that she would count among them. While most others are backstab magnets, I didn't get a single one on her as she's quite quick to readjust her position, so she does a much more respectable job of keeping you off her ass, and I respect that. Her flamethrower hammer also provides more than just basic swings and slams, but also area denials and ranged attacks, making her feel more like a genuine boss. But out of all the NPC fights, none is closer to resembling a major boss than number 4, Lumacchio, leader of the Bastards. I think based on my community's reaction to this boss, I will likely be cooked alive for this take, but I genuinely think this is a near great fight and by far the best of all the NPCs. And it's not entirely because I'm biased towards Astarion.
Oh, hello.
Though him having more character than most does not hurt, and that's partially thanks to the voice actor. But what does hurt is the confined space inside the hull of the shit ship, particularly when he begins leaping around like a fucking frog. But prior to that, he is an elegant, umbrella-wielding trickster, and I find his combos fun to deflect, particularly when he can cancel out of them with a sidestep to keep you on edge, as well as obscure himself with a smoke bomb before either doing a charge or dropping some bombs. There's an element of unpredictability as well as having to quickly react. While he is easier to backstab than Veronique, I think that's fine considering his inflated health thanks to his elixir abuse. This abuse leads him to become a decay-spewing carcass eventually. Decay sucks, especially when it's introduced at the tail end of the fight where you'll likely be out of heals and are already struggling to maintain weapon durability. Couple that with the lack of space, some flaily animations that take getting used to, and it's easy to see why he's seen as the biggest bastard of a boss. To highlight the issue with animations, with a jumpy boss like this, having shit like where he's seemingly about to do a leap attack only to instantly snap back to the ground, before jumping again and this time actually staying airborne, is just gonna fuck with your brain in a way that won't really feel fair when it causes you to miss time parries and get hits, especially when it's in the same goddamn combo chain. But I still love the concept. It's slightly reminiscent of Gascoigne from Bloodborne, where it turns from a standard affair into all-out panic. Number 3, the two-faced Overseer, however, is less of a Bloodborne boss and more of a Neo 2 boss, where he shifts back and forth between phases. Once staggered, he becomes enraged for a while and much more dangerous and relentless, before returning back to normal, and then back to molding out again eventually. It makes it so you may just focus on trying to stay alive when he's enraged, and when he's out of it, you yourself turn hyper-aggressive in hopes of preventing him from crashing out again. It's a different dynamic, and I think that's good. While it was rough getting the timing down for his super delayed attacks, I do have to say he's probably the best animated boss in the game, looks-wise. Every move of his just looks very smooth and feels weighty. It makes his crazy long enraged combos the scariest attacks in the game, but unfortunately I think it's the only thing that's unsettling about him. The underground facility is possibly the best design level in the entire game, and it's more horror themed than anything prior. It's got thick atmosphere and there's some build up to its horrible test subject waiting at the end. But it's kinda just a guy with a big axe. The head looks funny, but other than that, it doesn't really convey any kind of horror or supernatural qualities. So I think they could have done a little more with him than just having him be a basic brute. I mean, he is the prototype for Champion Victor, who also turns out to be just a dumb muscle guy, so I guess it adds up. It's just again that the level and environmental design for Lies of P is multiple steps ahead of its boss design in my opinion, but I still appreciate the cleanness of the fight and its unconventional phase structure. But what I appreciate far more in boss fights is creativity, developers trying something different, especially when it works out and translates to good gameplay. That's the best thing about Markiona, Puppeteer of Death, with whom we jump all the way up to Amazing tier. I was kinda torn on that though. I considered a great tier, but since I didn't give it to Romeo and I probably should've, I think I owe some reparations. This is kind of a gank fight, but with an emphasis on the master and the puppet taking turns, and you'll know when the puppet is attacking based on the color of the string attached to it. If it's red, get ready to be bred. This makes target switching work quite nicely, and mostly prevents off-screen attacks being unreactable. Albeit, there is the slight issue of Markiona herself having no indication for her aggression, so in some niche circumstances you might get blue-balled by her, particularly when she and the puppet attack together. But 9 times out of 10, this is a great gimmick. The dynamic of the two targets also lets you choose if you want to focus solely on the Puppeteer, divide attention, or destroy the puppet first so you can dish out some safe damage on Markiona, who will eventually repair it. Plan your damage output well and you can savage her health before she gets to activate phase 2, where the puppet now has massive AoE explosions, and she herself more combo finishers. I think this phase especially has some very intuitive attack animations, even the super delayed ones by adding a quick flash right before impact. In fact, a lot of these attacks I was able to parry first try just because the visual information is so clear. But the creativity doesn't end with the puppeteering, it extends to Markiona herself having a very unique weapon and fighting style. She's got these weird floaty orbs she can throw as lassos, wield as quick close-ranged weapons, throw and pull back like heavy cannonballs, bounce around in front of her, and spin around while expanding and contracting. So she alone has a great variety of attack types, and compared to the many slam, 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 swipe, swipe, swipe bosses, it's very refreshing to see. The fight is almost completely devoid of any complaints I've had for other bosses, to the point I almost feel she's too good for this game. But none is more so than Arlecchino, the Kino, who absolutely ravaged me and still keeps ravaging me to this very moment. As of making this video, I still haven't claimed victory after countless hours of having my blood overflood the courtyard pond. That's because I refused the help of a ginger who would otherwise make this a free victory. But on my own, I have to survive an onslaught of unpredictable attack patterns that, in order to fully deflect, you need to get into the rhythm of, but he has a tendency to mix up his attack chains in a way that can easily lead me to falling out of it. I then try to heal to recover from that mistake, only for him to input read and instantly take away what health I had regained before continuing a combo I wasn't ready for. It's brutal. But I can't really complain, this is the kind of shit I've been asking for since the start. I want crazy mix-up heavy combos and reactive bosses, as well as more attacks that require dodging over just parrying everything, which is a wish fulfilled in his second health bar that goes for the most over-the-top design possible with saws, blades, fucking floating red skulls, anime hair, and an edgelord cloak. Here for once, dodging is needed for more than just the occasional grab, and it's far better to me than just standing in front of a boss and memorizing the parry timings for the most generic attacks ever conceived of, while the music is trying and failing to convince me something cool is happening. Which leads me to an issue I still have that applies to every single boss I've talked about here. I know a lot of people disagree with me on this one, but I for one think the soundtrack that sounded like you asked AI to create a bunch of Souls-like boss themes has gotten worse in the DLC. I can't for the life of me, even after editing this video using the boss themes, recall any part of any song. It is so generic across the board. Seriously, do any of you recall Tyrannical Predator's theme? Overseer? Did Markiona even have music? And while Arlecchino's is definitely the strongest, it still lacks memorable melody to me. It's obviously very much up to taste, but I don't want to not mention it because of how much music can enhance the experience, as I felt was the case in Night Rain, where I loved just about every single boss theme. When it goes all loud choir, it earns it and it has musical sex with it. I mean, look, it's not bad, but I'm not gonna remember any of that. Maybe you will, and if so, that's very nice. I wish I had the same experience. So Arlecchino is tough. He's badass. I like his deranged serial killer puppet background, and he has the level of complexity I've come to expect from more seasoned developers. On top of all else mentioned, his massive arsenal of weapons provides lots of attack variety, including my favorite type of attack to have in a deflect-focused game. A rapid multi-hit where you just gotta mash that parry button to survive. His heal steals are annoying, but I'm impressed by how smooth he can transition into them from other animations, and his red attacks for the most part are just the right amount of tough, but possible to time right by paying close attention. And yet, something is still yet to quite click with me personally, and I really wonder if it's just Lies of P. The gameplay just doesn't feel like it's going to let me quite click with a boss as aggressive and agile as this. Even with the addition of more dodge-only attacks, I feel so rigid, whereas lately I've had the pleasure of battling bosses with more fluid, fast and mobile movement in the likes of Neo 3, Wukong, Gazan. Even if all I'm doing is pressing dodge at the right time, the momentum can still really add to the sense of pace. Here, I feel the biggest detriment to the game's best boss is the game itself. So my overall thoughts on Overture are pretty positive. That said, I think it should be called overpriced. It's not very meaty in its content, it's super linear, the mine sucks ass, but weapons, enemy variety, and the environments remain strong, and while I spent most of the segment on Arlecchino bitching, do keep in mind it is a fantastic boss. Not planning on revising my original ranking, but the top 5 is very easy. 1. Arlecchino, 2. Romeo, who does actually have very good music, 3. Markiona, 4. Nameless Puppet, and 5. Laxasia. After that, it's a huge drop, and I don't know who comes next. I know I've been slacking lately on YouTube, but I think that's going to change as there's a lot more coming that I want to talk about. Hope you'll stick around to be there for it. Thanks for watching,